It was midnight. The little village of Susa slept in darkness in the heart of the forest farms, among the tall trees. The mahoganies and sapels stood tall in the dark sky, providing a canopy over the village and deepening the density of this pitch-black night. The dying moon had done her job earlier on by providing faint light to the children who played in her glow and later listened to stories from their grandmothers. Now, after roaming about in the trees a while, the moon was far behind the mammoth mountain. The children of Susa snored in their mothers' bosoms. Adu turned in his bed, coughed slightly, and threw his hands about. He was a child of Susa, the village, and he too had been snoring. When he turned, his right hand fell heavily on his little sister's face. Ya woke up, frightened. Who had hit her? It was her big brother again. This was one thing she hated about him. Adu didn't know how to sleep. He was always restless in bed and disturbing her own sound sleep. At 10 years, she felt she was old enough to have her own bed, but Birago, their mother, wouldn't hear of it. She had not only put them in one bed, but had even put the bed in her room. You children need watching over, she told them. Ya took the heavy hand from her face and flung it back to its owner. The sudden gesture woke Tolovia, old Adu. He grumbled an insult and stretched full length on his side of the wooden bed, which creaked noisily in the silence. As he began to doze again, the little village of Susa slept on. From a distant cluster of neighboring villages, Adu heard a dog bark. Another dog howled. He ignored them. In this village, midnight was a dangerous time. It was better not to be awake or to hear noises. It seemed to Adu that he was moving away from the noises of the night, from the barking dogs, the hooting owls, and the insects. Or were the sounds of the night moving away from him? He couldn't tell. One thing he knew, the night was bad in these parts. Nobody wanted to remember the frightening stories told about Susa. It was better not to remember. Yet Adu was a boy who poked his nose into questions that only brave men asked. He knew more about the sadness of Susa and the dangers of the night than other boys of his age. He knew about the woman Susa, the landowner's wife who died, about her ghost who visited the village most nights, about the cheetahs and the lions and the leopards that roamed only at night, never during the day. Fear gripped Adu. Where was he? Now he knew that it was he who was moving away from the sounds of the night. The stories of Susa haunted his young mind. He was moving away from the village as if compelled by a force beyond his strength. He was in the forest, all alone. He looked around, but there was no one. How did he come to be here? He asked himself, but before he had time to think, Adu, someone called him. Wawatri, in front of him, it sounded like the voice of a woman. Fear overwhelmed him. Adu, the voice came again. He looked behind him. There was no one. Suddenly, there arose from behind the wawa tree what at first seemed like a dark winding smoke curling up the tree. Then it seemed to become the figure of a long, thin human being peering down at him. He screamed. A deep voice echoed his own voice. He heard a rustle behind him and turned to see. There, strong and alert, stood a giant leopard. The animal slammed at him. Her red eyes scrutinized Ado. When she began to wag her tail, Ado knew he was in danger. He took to his heels, but his legs couldn't carry him fast enough. He yelled, but his own voice bounced back to him. The echo this time was deeper. The leopard chased him, gnarring and bellowing. Ado, he stopped. Who called him? He turned round to see. The leopard stopped too and began wagging her tail. Ado was about to take to his heels again when the animal crouched and sprang at him. Ado cried out and dived to the side of the path. He heard many voices calling him, but he couldn't tell where they came from or whose they were. As he swung away from the path, the huge animal missed him and fell heavily. She rose up and chased at Ado as he ran through the forest of Susa. He did not love the plants, the trees, and the birds. Why had they now deserted him? For they were now on the side of the pursuing animal. They got in his way and hampered his progress. Susa slept on, while one of the sons of the villagers struggled alone in the forest with a beast that was determined to destroy him. Fireflies blurred his vision. He saw people hiding behind trees, but no one came to his aid. He yelled and kicked. Ado! 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 The voices now surrounded him. He felt someone pulling his leg and then his arms. Surely the animal was tearing him limb by limb. Papa! Mama! She's killing me! Ah! Ado! Ado! Wake up! Wake up! Ado woke up. He leaped from his bed and was about to rush out of the room when his father grabbed him in his strong arms. Hey, Ado, look here. What's the matter? Ado struggled briefly in his father's arms before he calmed down. Sweat covered his forehead. He breathed heavily and turned his head from side to side as if he was looking for something. He saw his mother gazing at him in bewilderment. She held Dia tightly to herself, as if to prevent her from going through the similar experience. Dia, also confused, looked on. Tears stood in their eyes. What is the matter? His father asked again. He sat him down on the bed, looked straight at him, and asked, What did you see? Ado looked around before he spoke. I saw a leopard. She was running after me. She was going to kill me. Ado told the story to a broken voice, but in great detail. His father Nemo rose up and left the room. It was daybreak. The darkness that had wrapped Susa round was gone. The sun had replaced the dying moon and was bright over the great mountain. Fireflies no longer roamed the sky. Birds now sang in the trees. Ado was confused. One moment everything and everybody was against him. Now he was surrounded by his family, loving and caring. It was only a dream, Ado, his mother said, trying to encourage him. You are all right. But the look on her face said something different. She was scared. Nemo went into his own room, sat down, and thought for a long time. He didn't like the mention of a leopard in Adu's dream. The leopard was his family totem. A family a family's totem shouldn't be seeking a family member to kill. Why would a member of his own family be seeking to destroy his son? That was his interpretation of the dream. He was not the kind of man to make a fuss about dreams, but he often remembered what his father told him long ago. When you dream and see an animal chasing you, don't take that dream lightly. And if that animal is a leopard, his father added, then you should seek for some help. It meant that something terrible was about to happen. Nemo worked as a farmer, but he was also a herbalist. Many years before, when this knowledge of herbs was being taught, him by his father, he strongly objected to the part that dabbled in Spiritism. He was still a young boy then and unable yet to say why he rejected the dealings of the spirit world, but he told his father that he didn't think he had the emotional strength to cope with the mysterious practices of juju men and soothsayers. In vain, his father put pressure on him to learn how to consult the dead. Eventually, his father had given up, calling him a coward. The other person who had called him a coward was his only sister, Goma, who now lived in Boama, a town west of Susa. Goma said Nemo's rejection of their father's spiritism was a bad omen for their family. From that time, she associated every mishap in the family with Nemo's decision. But why did he remember all this? Why did his son's dream awaken these memories? Seek help, his father had told him. Now what help was he going to seek? And from whom? What his boy had gone through that morning drove fear into him. For some time, he had been unable to wake up the boy, who screamed and threw his hands about as though he was being strangled. That was quite unlike Ado. Something dreadful might happen to him, and he must surely look for help. He decided eventually to see a certain young man in the village. Knowing that he expected too much from Yarrow, but of all the people in Susa, Yarrow was the person he felt he must see.